Hello, Coolman229 here with another Topic of the Week video. This week I'll be discussing Darth Vader and why he's so popular. This week's topic was submitted by Angel99 and her topic is Darth Vader is one of the most popular villains in the history of villains. So why do you think his character works so well and why he's such a popular character? To the point he's become like a mascot to Star Wars even. Now, first off I want to talk about why Darth Vader is so memorable as a villain. Even from our first introduction to him in A New Hope, we have a very striking image. He's first revealed walking through smoke, after all the rebels have been killed. And he's got this tall, imposing, all-black armor. He's got the billowing cape and the James Earl Jones voice, and it's intimidating. The way the mask looks, the way, his suit looks. He looks almost inhuman. And you wouldn't really know if he's human or not because he looks almost robotic. And even as Obi-Wan says, he's more machine than man. So even without learning anything about his character, even about his story and his backstory, we already have an imposing character design. Now, this also wouldn't particularly be very much used if there wasn't anything behind it. So, his villainy basically shows just how evil he is, like unrepentantly evil he is. He's complicit in the destruction of Alderaan, the torture of Princess Leia, and we find out from Obi-Wan that he was basically led the charge on slaughtering all the Jedi. So Darth Vader's a pretty bad dude. So we already have, even not too long into A New Hope, we already have this scary image. And over the course of the trilogy, you just see more and more, of his character. And really, once you add in, the red lightsaber, that completes his look. He's got the black armor, the black and chrome lightsaber, the red beam. It's like, this guy he looks terrifying. You can even see how this is in Rogue One, when one of the most iconic scenes in the entire movie shows Darth Vader in the shadows, and then he turns his lightsaber on, and that's all that you can see. That's the only light is from his lightsaber. He's iconic, and a lot of this is just from his character design. But all of it, him being a great villain, and that would do great. But he wouldn't be nearly as memorable if he didn't have the character arc he did across the original trilogy. Because one thing that really stands out about him is not just the fact that he was evil, and then he's got this really scary design that's intimidating with an intimidating voice. It's the fact that that's not all there is to him. And that's really, I think, what makes him so iconic, and what makes him that's what made him stick around for all these years, and why Darth Vader is still, to this day, 40 years later, it was 1977, 40 years later, that Darth Vader is still instantly recognizable by the average person. Even if they haven't seen Star Wars, they know what Darth Vader looks like. But again, like I said, it's not just because he looks scary. It's not just because he is scary. It's because there's so much more to his character. Because he's not only a good villain, because you can have good villains that aren't exactly very deep. And that's fine. Those kinds of characters they have their place. And, I don't think that you necessarily need super complex villains. Sometimes you can just have a villain who's just evil, and, they're just bad. Palpatine in a lot of ways falls into that, especially in the original trilogy. It's not until the prequels where we start getting some depth to just the sheer number of machinations that he had running. Excuse me, but this isn't about Palpatine, this is about Vader. Ultimately, the revelation that Vader is Luke's father that, I think, is truly what makes him stick around as a memorable character, along with the "No, I am your father" line being one of the most memorable lines, not just in Empire Strikes Back, but in the entire franchise. It's become so ingrained in popular culture. It's been parodied, to hell and back again. it's been referenced. Like, it's one of the most infamous late arrival spoilers ever. Pretty much everyone knows Vader is Luke's father before they even know anything else about Star Wars, just because it's become so ingrained in a popular culture. But from that, we actually start seeing where Luke, a lot of it in Return of the Jedi, he's got this dedication that there's still good in my father. It's like, yeah, he's turned to the side of evil. He's, committed mass murder and, genocide and, horrible, horrible things. But I know there's good deep down in him. So he spends the entirety of Return of the Jedi saying this. I know this is true. And he's like, I've sensed it in him. And I mean, really, you can actually tell that even in Empire. He never kills Luke. It's like, I mean, sure, he could have killed Luke. I mean, seriously, that whole fight on Bespin, he could have just slaughtered Luke. But he didn't, because he wanted to recruit him. And, Luke can see that there's good in his father. And by the end of Return of the Jedi, when he's ultimately redeemed by sacrificing himself to stop the Emperor from killing Luke and killing the Emperor, we actually see one of the most heartwarming scenes in the franchise, period, bar none, Vader's death. And when you see him talking to Luke, and he's like, wants him to take off his helmet. And it's stuff like that that I think really drives home that he is such an interesting character. He's got all this depth to him. And, you can do so many analyses of, Darth Vader's character. And, looking at him and what he, his thought process on things. And, and you can see even some stuff from the comics. I think the Darth Vader comics, where you show that he did at points go out of his way to protect Luke. Not because he's, a good guy, but because he doesn't want someone to kill Luke. He's got his own things that he wants to do with Luke. But, and I think the complexities of his character are really what make him so iconic. Now, obviously, as a villain, he remains iconic anyway, and even if he didn't have all the complexities of his character, just by sheer design alone, he'd be iconic. But he wouldn't have gone to the forefront with characters like Han, Leia, Chewie, Lando, Luke, Wedge Antilles. There are plenty of other characters in the original trilogy that could have remained that popular. And, some characters like Yoda, who really gained a lot of popularity in the prequels, especially when we actually got to see him fight. But Vader tends to take, basically hits a lot of points that some of the other characters don't. Luke, Han, Chewie, Lando, even Lando, they have good character designs in the way they're, dressed and, presented. But none are as striking as Vader. And from a purely visual standpoint, he pops. Even though he's pretty much all black, that design looks cool and intimidating. But for people who've watched the movies and they know the complexities of his character and they know his character arc, he stays in the minds of people far more than just being a crazy villain. That's really, in terms of, more, simple villains versus complex villains, a lot of people tend to remember the complexities of a villain, though sometimes I wish they'd not forget that they're villains, but that's another topic for another discussion. But really, the reason Vader is so popular is because, really, I think ultimately because of his redemption. Because his character arc meant something. Because he had a character arc. He's a villain with a character arc. And sure, it's different than a character like Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. But he still has a character arc. And you see from beginning when he's just flat out evil to the end of Return of the Jedi where he's redeemed himself and he's returned to the light side and joins Obi-Wan and Yoda as a Force ghost. Ultimately proving his redemption and that he has given up his evil ways. And that right there is such a heartwarming story, and it's one of the reasons why the original trilogy is so good, and it hits those emotional chords in such a fantastic way. Gosh, now I want to go back and rewatch Return of the Jedi. I'll do that later. But really, I think when you break it down, that's really why he's so iconic. Because, you know, people will talk about a character. And you have these complexities. You can talk about the character. You can discuss his emotions. You can discuss why he did X, why he did Y. What was his thought process on this? You know, his discovering of Leia. You know, him ultimately discovering that Luke is his son. You know, Luke Skywalker, and you know his weird adversarial / submissive slave relationship to the Emperor, and you know how who wanted to betray him, but ultimately when he failed to recruit Luke, he ended up becoming sort of depressed and basically resigned himself to serve the Emperor as he always had, and you have all these complexities and iconic. When you say iconic, I think there's a lot of ways. It's not just visuals, and I mean he's used a lot in marketing and advertisements, but what makes him stand out to the fan base and to the audience is that he's got more to him than just saying him. You look at him, you would think this guy is just evil. But there's so much more to him than that. And you know, he had this span of 20 years or something where he was just evil. Basically, he had lost everything. And you know, and then in the original trilogy, he finds his son is alive. He finds he also has a daughter. And you know, and adding in context from the prequels, that you know, his wife, you know, did give birth, and he actually has family now, what he thought he'd lost. And you really can, and this is just something that sticks around with people when they start talking about this. Because if you can inspire discussion about a character, you can really keep that character in the minds of the audience for a very long time. And since so much of Vader is iconic from a visual standpoint, it's memorable. He's memorable as a character and has great moments that really tug at your heartstrings. He basically pulls on all sides. He pulls on the audience from all sides of, you know, basically remembering him. So obviously, while people do remember Luke, Leia, and Han, and they're classic characters, and they're still iconic in and of themselves, Darth Vader himself is, I mean, it's funny. It's just, he's a good character. This is what happens when you have a good character with a good, you know, character design. And, you know, the ultimate presentation of his story is handled well. And the writing behind his character is really well. Especially since at first they didn't even plan for him to be Luke's father. That was something they came up with during Empire Strikes Back. And, you know, it just, that adds so much depth to his character. And really, it's inspiring, you know. And maybe I'm saying this as a writer myself, but it's inspiring to see that, and to see this effect that Vader will have on people. And you know, I'm sure you can pull a lot of fans and you show his death scene in Return of the Jedi where he's talking to Luke without his mask. And I'm sure you're going to find a lot of people who tear up at that. And even though I'm not someone who cries at everything and just, it's an emotional scene and it makes you want to go. I just get something in my eye. But, yeah. And I really think that's about it on this. Because it's a very simple point to make, honestly. I had a feeling this video wasn't going to be all that long because I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about in this. Vader is a great character, and this is what happens when you have great characters and good writing. It's not flawless, of course. There's no such thing as flawless writing. But this kind of writing in this character, along with his character design, is really what makes Darth Vader so iconic. And one of the reasons why he's such a popular character even today, that his handful of appearances in Rogue One were highlights. And, I'm not gonna lie, were pretty freaking awesome. Anyway, yeah, that's it for this week's topic. If you want to submit a topic, just comment below if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Tumblr, send me an ask and do topic : and then whatever topic you want me to talk about. Just make sure to follow the rules that I'll be posting down below on both Tumblr and YouTube. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. And thank you for watching.